We're living in a time of uncertainty, but one thing is for certain: we need a God, and we need to know who this God is that we would call on in a day like this, with all the uncertainty. We look at the first commandment that God gives us, and He says, "Thou shalt not have any other gods before me." So, who is this God that we should not worship any other God ahead of Him, put any other God in His stead? This is the God that created the heavens and the earth. He spoke His word, and the heavens and the earth, He said, "Let there be light." And the earth was separated by the waters. He put the stars and the moon in the sky. He created all the lands and the animals. And then He looked back and He said, "It's good." And when we look at good, if God said something was good, that had to be perfect. This was a beautiful place. Everything was in order. But He didn't stop there. He placed a garden in this land that He called good. Put all the seed-bearing fruits and trees in it. He placed a man and a woman in it to be able to guard it, to be able to take care of it, to be able to prune it. And when He looked down there then, He says, "This is very good." God has created now a place of perfection, a place that we could not imagine, because in the last days, there that God says that He's going to take us out of this place. He's going to take us to a place where there's no more sorrow, no more sickness, and no more death. A place where the sun shines, the streets are gold, the people are just praising God and worshiping God, families are together, everything is good. Everything is very, very, very good. And this is what God has placed in this garden. But God is not a God that is God because He says, "You're going to do it this way." God gave us a choice. And in that garden, He planted 2 trees that bared fruit. And one was called the tree of life. And that tree of life, when we understand the word, we understand it is Jesus Christ. It is the word. That tree of life, when we eat of that tree of life, something takes place. Because as we eat that tree of life, eat of it, there's a seed that comes out of that we become that seed, that we're planted, and we begin to grow, and we begin to expand upon this garden that He has placed, that He said, "This is very good." He's caused a place for us to be that's absolute perfect. This man, this woman, they loved one another. They had no sickness, no sorrow. There was no death. There was joy. There was peace. There was comfort. There was never too hot, never too cold. There was never a coronavirus. There was none of these things that caused fear to come up on the people today. And as long as they ate of that tree, that fruit, we began to bear much fruit within ourselves. But God had given us a choice, and He also placed in that garden another tree. And in that tree also had seed. And when we begin to eat of that seed, which God says, "You shall surely die if you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil," this is where we begin to worship another God. Because in this, that God took care of everything with the tree of life. But now we have been given a choice, and we see that tree looks good. It tastes good. And it even had good vitamins and everything in it. But there was something that was lurking behind that. The tree of life had Jesus Christ, the Word of God.
Right.
Now this tree has Satan and all his pride. See, that's what made him fall. It was his pride, all the greed and all the selfishness, all these things was behind him. And now God is telling us not to have any other God before us. Last night, my granddaughter had to do an art project. And in this, she had to draw a picture of what this coronavirus looked like. And she drew a little monster. And as she drew that little monster, that's what it was. It was a monster. But I said, that monster should be feared. This virus and all the things that's going on, these plagues that might fall upon us at this time, these are things that should be feared. But then she made a shadow that come off from it was bigger than that monster. And it was darker, and it was uglier, and it was scarier than that little monster. And people today, they're fearing, and the fear is becoming greater than the monster that is before us, because that fear is causing a people to hoard. It's causing the people to fight and feud. It's breaking up homes. It's breaking up churches. It's breaking up governments. It's breaking down this whole world because of what is behind it. That devil, that false word, that false seed is beginning to bloom and to begin to grow. But God says, you shall not have any other God before me. God has prepared a place for us that would trust him and putting our trust in nothing else. But because God has a plan, and his plan shows us plainly who he is. And when we put something else ahead of him, it's ugly on the backside. It's beautiful up front. It's ugly on the backside. God's beauty was in the front, and it was all the way through. The devil, he come to kill, steal, and destroy. And he doesn't come as an axe murderer. He doesn't come with a gun. He comes looking beautiful. He comes with good things in his hand. But see, behind the tree of knowledge of good and evil, behind the good that's in that, he perverts it. And everything that the devil has his hands in is perverted. So there's only one God that's worthy to be praised. There's only one God that's worthy to be loved and to be worshipped. And how do we worship this God? We worship him by keeping his commandments. His commandments are not grievous. They're not hard. They're not wicked. They're not cruel. They're not over exaggerated. But God's commandments are given to us that we might have life and have life more abundantly. God has this plan for us. And in this time of uncertainty, and people are afraid, and there's people that have been in church that are running from the church and running to the things that look good. And on the other hand, there's people that have been lost for so long, they're running to the church saying, we need help. What do we do in this last day? This is imperative that we stand strong in this last day, that we be a people that are an encouragement to those that are lost, as well as those that are saved, to those that are weak and to those that are scared. It's imperative that we become strong in his word, to be able to keep his commandments. He says, if you love me, you'll keep my commandments. He said, but that if faith comes by the word and by the hearing of the word. When you hear the true word of God, it can't be adulterated. It can't be perverted. Because if you're doing that, you're eating of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We have to eat the true fruit. We have to eat the fruit that we want to bear seed from. We don't want that our children would be lost in this world. We don't want our children dying of some kind of a plague. We don't want our children becoming drug addicts and alcoholics and adulterers. We don't want them. Then where's the seed coming from? The seed of our children is who we come from. Where do we come from? Hopefully we come from the tree of life, that we would not have to worry about worship any other God, because there is no other God worthy to be praised like our